You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 4th, 2023, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today, we're just going to kick around some topics. There's been a lot of news lately. So it seems like with once a week show, we just don't have time for it all. But some of the things we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about the Newsom-DeSantis debate that just happened last week. Kind of gives a good juxtaposition of some of the big issues of what states are doing differently out there regarding policy. We're going to talk a little bit about the government's war on landlords. It just seems like it's been in high gear ever since the lockdowns. And then if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about some more examples of misinformation being put out by mainstream media. And finally, our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, we're going to talk a little bit about Biden's inflated sense of his own economic knowledge. But before that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. And my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So one little thing we've started doing new since the last show, and is we want to kick off every show with sort of a quote of sort of a famous liberty-minded person out there, so that viewers can get a sense of, maybe what libertarians are all about. Last week, the one we quoted, and I just wanted to bring that back again real quick because I think it's so apropos to what we do on the show here. But and it was Javier Milei, who recently won the presidency as a libertarian, running as a libertarian, which is pretty amazing. He won the presidency of Argentina. And he made this comment that he said in an interview, and he said, "I did not come here to guide lambs. I came here to awaken lions." And I just wanted to repeat that again because I almost feel like that's what I'm hoping we're doing with the show. So if you're watching out there and you see us interview people who are like running for their city council, or they have other liberty ideas in their neighborhood, that's what we're hoping. By showing them and talking to them, we're hoping that that'll help to wake people up who might be watching, and that you can figure out things to do in your community. But so anyways, that was the quote for last week. Now let me bring in the quote for this week. So the quote for this week is from Ludwig von Mises, and he is a prominent economist of the Austrian school. In fact, there's a whole institute named after him that we've had people on from their institute to interview, called the Mises Institute. But he had this quote that said, "Every step toward the elimination of profit is progress on the way towards social disintegration." And, it may seem a little abstract, but what he's talking about there are the fact that price signals mean something. And when we get these people who want to take control of our economy and they think they can go in there and, they say, "Oh, profit's a terrible thing. We're going to eliminate this stuff." And, it's like, well, we'll put people before profits. Well, profits actually are showing that people are doing what other people want them to do. Right? That's literally saying how well they're doing it. And to a degree that people choose to engage their services, it's literally because they're meeting people's needs. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. And hey, if you guys have any thoughts, you guys wanted to jump in on this one too. But yeah, it's
you mean people who have never in their lives had to produce something of benefit to other people and got rewarded by their profits are telling us that profits are a bad thing? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we constantly hear these people harping at us, especially from the left, that you're putting profits before people, but often that's what the profit shows. It's a price signal to say that you're meeting the needs of what the people want. So anyway, yeah. Go ahead, Leon. Did you have any? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And in such a way that you're actually earning a profit over the top of what you're charging, or over the top of what your cost is. Let's put it that. In other words, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Leon.
This whole thing about profits above people, it's some sort of pejorative, but the underlying assumption is that it's only the government can do good. That is the underlying assumption there, because the government, they're always there. They're just these nice, wonderful people who are going to save us from every risk and every bad thing that could possibly happen to us. But
Well,
we
and
know
Leon,
that,
Leon, sorry, but we know that the government certainly doesn't know how to make a profit. Sorry, I just had to jump in with that.
True. So we always have these evil capitalists who put profits, quote unquote, profits over people, when in truth and in fact, it's because of these people who seek profits in the marketplace. They end up doing social good, even though they don't intend to. Okay, because like Bill Gates don't give one hoots about me, and I don't give a hoots about him. But his products have surely enhanced my life in terms of my productivity, and this is because he did put profits over people, if you want to say that. But he ended up doing social good by the work he have done. He, and whether they wanted to be Steve Jobs or whoever else you want to call in this information revolution that we have had, technology revolution, technology innovations that we have had over the last 20-30 years. But the left cannot seem to grasp that concept. They cannot seem to grasp that concept. That is, people in the marketplace that end up doing social good, even though they have no intention of doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, Leon, because you mentioned like, you're buying something and therefore, that they're making a product because you want it, but also you're profiting by buying it too. That's the whole reason, or you wouldn't even buy it if you weren't profiting from it.
Exactly.
So maybe the left doesn't want you to feel like you profited from that exchange. I don't know. You feel miserable. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Now get back in line. It's about another 30 minutes for your roll of toilet paper.
That's right. Yeah, of course. The left is very good at producing misery, so they think that is the most wise and beautiful thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of misery, let's jump into our first topic, and that would be the debate that recently just happened between Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And this is kind of an odd debate because neither of these are the front runner for for their party. DeSantis is a Republican, Newsom is a Democrat, and Lord, don't we know how he's a Democrat here in California. But as far oh, sorry, go ahead, Leon.
No, I just say we know too well, way too well.
Yeah. Well, anyways, they had this debate, and it was kind of an odd debate because they said that they're not the front runners, and yet it almost felt like the debate that should have been. I mean, if the current front runners wind up being the final front runners for the Democrats and Republicans, it's going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And both of them, have an awful lot of baggage. And they're both about as old as time. So, which is pretty, I guess demonstrable when you look at these other two guys who are on the stage, these relatively young governors. But it's kind of odd, though, that's what we're sort of facing. But the debate was kind of an interesting debate because it touched on a lot of topics. It touched on Bidenomics and the economy, what's going on. It talked a little bit about COVID lockdowns, which was a big juxtaposition between how California did things and how Florida did things. And it talked about a lot of other issues like crime and homelessness. And so we're gonna touch on some different clips from that and discuss them, just so we can sort of get a sense of what that debate was about and how it ran. But I do have to say right off the front, it did feel a little bit loaded against Gavin Newsom, being Sean Hannity as the moderator. It almost felt like 2 against 1 throughout the Now that's usually the way it seems when it's Republicans on one of the mainstream media networks. That it's certainly we saw that with Biden and Trump, where literally Trump was bringing up things like the laptop, the oh gosh, what was it, the Hunter Biden laptop, and the moderators would just jump in and support whatever it was Gavin or not Gavin, Joe Biden was
Joe
saying.
Biden, yes.
So it was almost like 2 against 1 there. So I guess maybe this is a little bit of I don't know, evening out or whatever. But that was the main thing that bugged me about it. But otherwise, there was a lot of interesting stuff. And so jumping to the first issue in the debate, and let me just bring up a visual of the debate here too. So James, could you share the visual real quick on the screen? So so these were the two debaters. This is Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom, and there's a Reason article about it, and it said mainly pointing out that COVID was the big tell in this, because almost all the distinctions happened during that COVID period that really showed big differences between the states, and why people were voting with their feet to leave one and go to the other. So, but as far as things go, let's talk a little bit about the lockdowns and COVID. And so we have a little clip for that. And so James, our invisible hand, if you could show us video clip 1.
Policies.
Just understand, you don't need to lie about it. No, it's not.
You were a lockdown governor.
No, it's
you
not.
locked down
one at a time.
schools,
Gavin Newsom, finish your thought.
Beaches, bars, and restaurants. That's just a fact. He's running away from his record. He's running away from the fact tens of thousands of people died unnecessarily
you saw the CDC
because he
numbers.
caved to the. It's 29% higher death rate in the state of Florida versus the state of California.
Okay, quick response, Governor.
You showed the stats. The stats are very clear.
One at a time.
On a per capita age-adjusted basis, California and Florida basically the same. Now, why is that important? Because Gavin Newsom did huge damage to people in California. He ruined livelihoods. We reopened the state very quickly. We saved thousands of jobs. We saved hundreds of thousands of jobs, thousands of businesses. We had our kids in school. He had the kids locked out of school because of the teachers union. That is having a generational impact. California has one of the lowest literacy rates in the country. In the most recent NAEP exam, Florida came in number 3 for 4th grade reading. California was far, far behind. So you should apologize for not getting your kids in school. Why didn't you get the kids in school in the summer of 2020 like we did?
The only
you bowed to the teachers union.
Okay, so that was kind of a snippet on some of the differences. Gavin Newsom essentially hitting him with Ron DeSantis caused all kinds of deaths, and Ron DeSantis hitting him with, well, one, rebutting his claim, saying, no, we performed just about as well as you, and then saying that, hey, but you destroyed a lot of people's lives economically by not letting them operate during these lockdowns. And so it amazed me that the first thing is to hear Gavin Newsom, who was like the king of lockdown. I mean, he had people locked. We all live in California, and he had people locked down here for, about a year. In fact, if you were a government employee, you weren't even going to work for about a year. You were working from home. So this is, and a lot of places in San Francisco, the retail has dried up, because not just from the crime that happened that was allowed to happen during that time, but also because nobody's showing up to these downtown areas anymore, because nobody's working there anymore because of these lockdowns. So there's all kinds of economic upheaval that happened. But there's also another visual I wanted to show real quick here too, because this compares the comment that Newsom was making about the CDC number. So this is from the CDC. I figure they had kind of a stat that they showed during the show, but because it's Hannity and I didn't really understand where those numbers came from. They said it was the CDC, but I figured, okay, well, if he's saying at CDC, let's just go to the CDC and see. So this is their mortality by state, and I believe this is age adjusted, I believe. But yeah, here it says age adjusted death rates. And so that's what they were talking about during the show. So if you want to see how the two did, this is sort of a color reference. Florida apparently in 2021 just did a little bit worse than California. So California is the next shade up. Florida is the next shade down. The darker the shade, the worse they did, according to this chart. And if you go to 2020, it's actually the reverse, where Florida actually did better than California. So at least for the numbers they have up here for 2020 and 2021 on the CDC's charts, it's sort of a mixed bag depending upon how you look at it. But even if we look at Gavin Newsom's numbers for the year that he did better, you have to go all the way down the list, and you find California right about in the middle of the pack at 99 death rate. I believe that's per million, I think.
I think it's 400,000. I think.
Or per 100,000, yeah. So you have a 99 per 100,000, and then you have Florida, which is 111.7. So, it's not 29% different, okay? And we saw the year 2020, Florida did better than California. So it's not nearly the difference that Gavin Newsom was trying to make out from his numbers. But even then, Gavin Newsom at 99, look at all the states that did better than him. So, I mean, it's like to try to act like somehow he did things right and Florida did everything wrong is just kind of a little bit nuts. But anyways, what do you guys think about at least these points between the lockdowns and the differences that they were trying to debate with each other?
Well, I mean, I think DeSantis did point out that even though Gavin Newsom had lockdown the schools, and his own kids were having in-person learning, which was a major hypocrisy that I didn't think it got enough play, quite frankly. But the fact of the matter is, California did this draconian lockdown, and Florida did not. They did have a lockdown, but they opened up pretty early. They opened up their schools and pretty early, and that kind of stuff and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you believe the numbers that you just display here, Jason, or you believe the numbers that Hannity put up during the debate itself, their outcomes were not very different. They were not. Okay? So which to me, you have to interpret that the lockdowns did nothing but destroy the lives of our fellow citizens. So in that sense, you'll have to give a thumbs up to DeSantis, because he opened up as early as he possibly could have, and his results were not very much different from what happened here in California, which we all lived through, and we know it was nothing but a damn disaster.
Good point. And the only thing I would add to that is if you, the age-adjusted data is the only way to go, because Florida's got a much older population than California.
True.
Retirees. So that's a good thing. But if you want to see Florida doing better than California, just look at the all deaths, not just COVID deaths, but all deaths. And during the same time period, Florida did better than California on the whole category of all deaths. And the thing I like about taking that into consideration is that if you shut an economy down and you're running people away from their appointments with doctors because there's nobody available and they can't get other things taken care of, then they may have repercussions and added deaths from that. So and the data doesn't really say that in particular, but it says that, hey, California had more deaths when you consider all deaths than Florida did per capita, and age adjusted. You have to do it age adjusted as always, but anyway, there you have it. And we don't have that chart up there, and I was kind of looking for it earlier but couldn't find it, but it's there. And anyway, there we are.
That's an excellent point, Tim, because this is the problem that central planners always miss, is that there's opportunity costs. There's things that they do trying to solve one problem, where they potentially create much bigger problems. And that's one of the things we were seeing during that. So, yeah. I mean, it's certainly a death of somebody who doesn't get in to get their heart checked is every bit as real as a death that somebody attributes to COVID. So
the COVID, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I mean, Tim is absolutely right. I mean, these things are not taken into consideration in those numbers. And even though that is true, the other thing too that we have since found out, that those COVID death numbers are totally exaggerated, quite frankly, because they were counting all kind of stuff. Some guy fell off a ladder, and I don't remember where it was, and he died. and they said it was COVID. He did have the COVID virus in him, but he didn't die from COVID. But that was attributed to COVID, a COVID death. So some of those numbers are even quite exaggerated. So we don't even have the truth about what was really COVID deaths as of right now. I mean, I don't know if anybody have adjusted the numbers as yet, but those numbers are inflated anyway.
Yeah,
So we don't know.
some of those. Yeah, some of those COVID stats, they almost felt like essentially attributing a death to COVID sometimes was about like if a person died in a car crash and they found out he had a bottle of water and you say, well, he must have drowned, right? It's, because this is the problem. A lot of people didn't even know how to count these metrics when they first came out.
Exactly.
A lot of states and jurisdictions were doing it differently. And a lot of states were checking on the people differently. And then, of course, there were incentives. If you counted a death as COVID, then suddenly you got different resources from the government if it was a COVID death versus another type of death. So there's just all kinds of potential skewing of the numbers. But at least with respect to what the CDC said and with respect to what these two governors were saying, it very much looks like DeSantis was kind of overinflating his argument on this particular issue. I'm not sure I understand.
DeSantis was overinflating.
Sorry, Newsom was overinflating. I'm mixing up my governors here. Sorry.
No, that's what I like about the all deaths stat is that it rules any changes. I mean, if somebody's dead, they're dead. Okay, we're not saying how he died, just he died. Okay, so that's cut and dry, regardless of the jurisdiction, wherever it is, from one state to the next, counting, what particular thing killed them. You rule all that out when you just look at the all deaths thing. And in that situation, Florida did better than California during the time during which there were a lot of COVID deaths, COVID related. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Well, and speaking of which, one of the issues with the lockdowns and COVID is it had huge economic impacts on us. And so that kind of takes us to another area of the debate, which was they got very early into Bidenomics. Since Biden has been in control, the issue was, do you think that that's been a good approach to the economy? So let's pull up video clip number 2, James, if we can.
Working people, they pay more in your state than the state of California charges for billionaires and millionaires, and it's just a value proposition.
True.
It's a fact. Again, you can't make.
You have $6
up.
or $7 a gallon gas. How do they afford that? These are folks that are blue collar people.
You're going
to force everybody to buy an electric vehicle. How are they going to be able to afford electric vehicles if you're working class people? And I think the thing about California, they have one of the highest inequality rates because, they've got Silicon Valley billionaires. They've got a lot of very wealthy people. They've got a lot of people that are on government assistance, but they've hollowed out their middle class. That's who's been leaving California. They've been leaving in other places. They go to Arizona. They go to Nevada. They go to all these places.
Let me just
like Biden is hollowing out this country.
I do have a follow-up question.
In California.
Ron, I'm happy that you continue to talk. Let's talk a little bit about Bidenomics because I'm happy to take that on right now as well. And I think it's a fair point.
You're a big supporter of it. I appreciate you acknowledging
14 million jobs, 10 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined.
Okay. So that was the first clip of the economic stuff. And so certainly they were going back and forth between tax rates and standards of or just costs of goods, I guess, within the states. Sort of the livability thing. But Newsom did make one really, I guess fact checkable comment. I guess it's the best way to say it. And he said that Bidenomics is great because it's produced 14 million jobs, is what he was saying since since Biden took office. So let's check out the truth of that number. Thanks, James. Our invisible hand is ahead of us on this. Invisible hand knows all. It moves in mysterious ways. Anyways, this is a chart of the Fed, from the Fed, and that's the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. And so they put out wonderful charts, by the way, if you're ever interested in trying to research anything and get some data to show for an argument. But this is essentially employment numbers in thousands of persons. So essentially, these are in the millions over here in this side column. And it shows from 1950 all the way to current day. So this is 2023, October 2023. So we're really close to current data, which is unusual in a lot of these types of graphs. So anyways, you can see that here's this nice trend over time. And then boom, we get to this big drop off. Well, what's the big drop off in 2020? That's COVID. That's the lockdowns. So that's essentially the hit that the economy took during that time period. And then it takes us to 2023, where we've essentially just gone slightly over the numbers that we recovered from then. But you can see if we had just extended this trend, we would be quite a bit above those numbers as well. And so I want to home in on that just a little bit here too, that dip, because this is really important to what Newsom is saying there. Newsom is saying that Biden created 14 million jobs. Well, let's and DeSantis was essentially saying, hey, look, that's not real. That's just a recovery from the lockdowns. And so let's check out the truth of that. So here is where the impact of the lockdown started. We see it in February and March of that year. Everybody was getting frightened to death about what this, COVID was going to do to everybody. And so all kinds of things started happening in the economy. Then we had orders to lock down, remember, 2 weeks to stop the spread. And then that turned into a lot more than that. And essentially we went from about an employment level of around 159 million to dropping all the way down to 133 million. So that was much bigger than a 14 million job drop. That is about a 25 million job drop, roughly 26 million right in there. So now you can see the recovery starts right away. And lo and behold, by October of 2020, before the election, we've recovered more than half of those jobs. So this is just bouncing back. But then with the election, everything gets taken out of whack because, everybody's adjusting to the new reality of having Biden as president. And then we get a much slower recovery happening the rest of the way until finally, until recently, we just started to get back to the levels roughly of where we were before lockdowns. So, this is certainly a checkable number that Newsom was giving there in that debate. And by the way, if you're watching us right now, we are going to have to leave if you're watching us on public access, but you can go, we're going to keep talking about this. So you can come back or go back and hear the rest of this conversation by going to our either Facebook, YouTube, or Rumble, or Spotify and searching for Knuckleheads of Liberty. And you can catch the rest of this discussion about this debate and also hear a lot of great interviews we've done with liberty-minded people as well. So go check those out. So anyways, let's continue with the conversation. So what do you guys think about this? I mean, this, or any of the other claims they were making in that economic policy discussion?
Newsom was promoting this fallacy, that for one thing, the government create jobs, Biden create jobs. The government does not create jobs. Okay, this is damn nonsense. Okay, to start with. Okay, even the bureaucrats, which I used to be one of them. All of that is even supported by taxpayers. It's supported by the businesses in the marketplace and people who pay their taxes. But this whole concept about, Biden created all of these jobs is such a fallacy of nonsensical proportions. I know that sounds redundant, but I mean it as I say it. The fact of the matter is the government can destroy employment and employment opportunities. They can do that, which they do very well. And they did that very well during the lockdowns. And then this lie is being told now to kind of make Biden look like he's some Superman where where job creation is concerned. I mean, it's a damn lie. And I'm glad that at least some people are pointing it out like we are doing right now, pointing out this damn nonsense that some or the other, the government can create jobs or Biden policies can create jobs. No, they don't. They don't. They can't. That is not how the government works. It's a marketplace that creates all the jobs. And when the government get in there and mess things up like they did with the lockdowns, with all the rules and the regulations, yeah, they can destroy employment. They can do that, but they cannot create jobs. They don't. They don't know how to do that. That's not their thing. There are very few things that they know how to do, and even those things they don't do very well. This is not a bunch of nonsense, quite frankly.
So they have a brake, but they have no accelerator. Is that what you're saying?
But they tell you they're accelerating while they're hitting the brake.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, they let off the brake a little. They let off the brake, and then they say, "See what we did? We accelerated."
Yes, yes. After they take the sledgehammer and beat you over the head, and then they stop hitting you. Instead of hitting you 20 times, they only hit you 10. Then they say, "Oh, look at what we have done. Oh my goodness, we are so wonderful." You know?
Yeah, don't you feel so much better now that we're only doing half the damage to you?
Why are you not grateful? Why are you not grateful? We only hitting you 10 times, right? We were hitting you 20 times before. No, we only hitting you 10. Come on, be grateful. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It really is.
The graph does show that it was just a recovery from the lockdowns. It's like,
Right.
the government stomped stomped on the brake, and then they let it off with lockdowns, and then they claim, look how many jobs we created. Yeah, you know, I'm going to have to argue with Leon. They did create them by letting off the brake. That's how they created them.
They created relief from there.
Oh, I see. If they stop hitting us with the sledgehammer, I guess that's creation. Ain't them? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was stark though to see, and Jane, maybe you could bring back that visual one more time, because I just want to make that point that if you look at the curve here, this is during Trump's administration. It's much faster job recovery than what we had under Biden. I mean, in fact, it took a while to get going under Biden. It's like it just Biden's elected. He flattened out. And then it just sort of started creeping up, you know. So, anyways, but
the only thing I would say about that is that initial jump was just the jobs that actually existed that were not being allowed to be filled by employees, and so those bounced back that quickly. And I think the slower line was after those low-hanging fruit type of jobs came back, whether it was under Trump or doesn't matter, because none of them have that close of that ability to create jobs. So it wasn't that. It was just a bounce back in the economy. The economy creates jobs, and there you have it.
I would push back just a little bit, though, Tim. I agree with you. Normally, you don't have the ability to affect things that fast with policy, but you do have the ability to scare the bejesus with, I guess, uncertainty out of people. And I think that's what we're seeing right around the election here. Everybody got really uncertain because, I mean, you see this just flat line, from, I mean, that's almost as far as a 90-degree bend as you can get.
Yeah. Well, I may have been uncertain myself during that time period, but I still went to work every morning.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, but this is just the point, though, Jason. The government can destroy opportunities, job opportunities. They can destroy businesses by whatever policies they institute. That is true. They can do that. Whether they create uncertainty or whether they actually force people to close their businesses, as they did during the lockdowns. And when they let the ease off on some of their draconian policies, whether it's that they say, okay, fine, you could open back up now, or we're not gonna impose this regulation upon you and that kind of stuff. Yeah, then we see the bounce back, right? Yeah. But there is no creation there of anything. Okay, the government doesn't create anything, and Biden didn't create jobs, and Trump didn't create jobs. Yeah. They let their foot off the brakes. They did. They took their foot off the brakes and allowed the economy to flourish. Sure, that's true. But create? No.
Yeah. And the funny thing is too, I mean, if you look at the job growth during Trump's administration, actually it was about the same rate of growth as was happening during Obama's administration. So
Okay, there you go.
it's just
Yes.
Biden seems to have, a special talent for being worse than the other side. It's Bidenomics. But there was another video clip I want to share real quick too, because it does show a little bit about how these people think as far as their prescriptions for the economy. And so this would be video clip number 3, and it has to do with gas prices.
You're
So
absolutely
James,
right. Since the 1980s, Republican administrations, Democratic administrations have experienced, under their stewardship, experienced higher gas prices in the state of California. We've been ripped off by big oil. We continue to be ripped off by big oil. Big oil now has met a new foe, and that's the state of California, the most aggressive anti-gouging law in America, more transparency being required than any time in America. And yes, we're suing the industry responsible for this climate crisis. By the way, the same climate.
So this is the crazy thing that happens in California every year. So just in case you saw this debate and you think, hey, they're really doing something here. So California has a different gasoline market than the rest of the country, and it has to do with our pollution standards here in this state. We require during the summertime a different blend, which is why the prices tend to go up in California during the summer over the rest of the nation. It's part of it. I mean, we also have different taxes and stuff that they talked about, but we have a different gasoline requirement. So we can't just use the gasoline that's used in all the rest of the 49 states. It's a special blend for California. And so by doing that and having this essentially boutique market for fuel, if there's any disturbances in that market, you don't have the supply chain. If there's a refinery down or anything else. And we see this happen almost every other year, where people complain about gas prices in California, and then the politicians say, well, that's okay. It's those greedy oil companies, and we're going to sue them. And that's exactly what you see Newsom saying here. And I swear this happens. You can almost time it to a watch. It's like at least every other year where you see that some Democrat politician says he's going to sue the oil companies because they're ripping us off on our gasoline prices. So anyway, what do you guys think about this issue, that it's just greedy manufacturers that need to be controlled by Gavin Newsom to
Go ahead,
out?
Have at it, Leon.
Well, how quickly we forget. We I guess, I don't know, we voters, I guess, or whoever we are, the citizens of California. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, yes, this boutique market came into being here in California when they introduced MTBE into our gasoline. Oh, we're gonna solve the climate problem. Oh, we're gonna have low emissions, and all these great, wonderful things are gonna happen. But the politicians, as usual, Gavin Newsom and company, do not realize when you put more burdens upon people who are whether they're selling gasoline or selling any product, you put more burdens upon them. It's going to cost more for the consumers, because the consumers pay for everything. That's what these people, these educated idiots don't realize, is that you are putting more burdens upon the industry that is supplying the products that you need. So now Gavin Newsom comes along and he's going to save us now. First of all, his government created the problem, and now they're going to save us. And how are they going to save us? They're going to sue those greedy oil companies. Oh my goodness gracious. We're going to go to gasoline utopia now, because Gavin Newsom is now the big bad boy who is going to solve our problems for us. Why don't you look at your policies, and then we can start talking some sense here about what's going on?
My question is, if they sued the oil companies and won, and the oil companies paid the state of California a certain amount of billions of dollars, is the state of California going to give that billions of dollars to us beleaguered fuel buyers, purchasers, us consumers of oil, or are they going to keep it to themselves? That's my only question.
It's probably on a fast track to the bottomless pit of the bullet train.
Yeah, and then this damn nonsense about price gouging. How do you have any? Well, there's no such thing as price gouging. Okay, the only people that do price gouging is government. That's the only people that's price gouge us. Okay,
And people that never took economics in high school or college.
exactly. And I've told this story before. I lived through a hurricane. My wife, myself, my wife, and my son, my oldest son, who was at the time about 5 or 6 months old. We lived through a hurricane. We lost a lot of stuff because the electricity was off. We had to throw out a lot of stuff. But those politicians in Houston, which is where I was, oh, anybody found price gouging, we're going to make sure, blah, 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 blah. So we couldn't get ice to save our stuff. So I was willing to spend $30 or so to get enough ice, which would have probably got me through the hurricane and get me through the time that the electricity was off. I was willing to spend the money, and I'm sure many of my neighbors and fellow citizens in Houston were probably willing to do the same thing. But we couldn't get the ice, okay, because the politicians were there willing to arrest anybody who was quote unquote price gouging. So we end up losing, instead of me spending $30, I end up losing about $150 of stuff that I had to throw out, meat and everything, some of my baby food for my kid and all kind of stuff. I had to throw it out. But what did they save me from?
The scariest words, I think it was Reagan or somebody else who said it. We're from the government and we're here to help.
We had to help.
Yeah. Okay. Just real quick, for people to move that ice from point A to point B, and you, Leon, were point B, they would have had to go through a higher expense. They would have had to, right, get a truck, load it on the truck, drive it, pay the gas to drive it to you. The supply chain was interrupted by the hurricane, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The supply chain is the more affordable supply chain, and so now it was a less affordable method. They had to drive some truck over rocky roads and up around, and maybe go a much longer distance because of the damage of the hurricane. Right? They couldn't pass.
And not to mention more risk, Tim. I mean, just
risk. Exactly. Yes.
Correct. Yes. Correct. They had to do all that and hire special people to help them, and so on and so forth. Go a longer ways, and now they get to point B, Leon, and they say, Leon, because it costs me $28 or whatever per whatever, or $25 or $20 to get this to you, I have to charge you $30 to make a decent profit, or else guess what? I ain't gonna do it.
True.
Okay, if I can't get that money, so either you get the ice for $30, or you don't get any ice at all.
At all.
And that was what you experienced. And that's the whole thing about price, quote unquote, price gougers. They're not gouging. They're simply facing the new reality of a different supply chain, a more expensive supply chain. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah,
the point about all this is, so these lefty politicians like Gavin Newsom and company and stuff like that, they don't seem to comprehend or they don't want to comprehend that those very basic facts that you just laid out, Tim. That is it.
Now they just hate freedom, because freedom is a guy that loads a truck up with ice and travels, goes and takes a chance for $30. Yeah, that's freedom. They hate that. They want you dependent upon the government. The government will bring in ice. They'll get the National Guard moving, and they'll go pick up ice and fly it in on a helicopter and offload it at a cost to the taxpayers of $50 instead of $30. That's what they want you to do, and they will pay for it with your tax money or debt that's going to screw your economy up eventually.
Well, essentially they want to sell themselves as a hero in the whole thing, and that's how they do it, by jumping in the way of free people. But there is one little complication to that too before we jump into the next topic, because we got to move along. But imagine too if the ice was prescribed to be a special recipe by the government. So then you couldn't even just ship in ice from anywhere. You had to meet their special requirements for ice in that region. And that's essentially what happens in California. You have a special blend. And there's good reasons for that, too. I mean, there is serious pollution problems in places like Los Angeles. But regardless, that's one of the other constraints of why the price goes up, because not just anybody can rush in to save the day. But anyways, speaking of saving the day, let's talk about crime as well. And so this was one of the other focuses of the debate. James, can we get video clip number 4?
Direction. With all due respect, look at your own backyard, Ron.
So
You're
I
not
will
mining
do that,
your
but
backyard on this issue.
I will do that because we have we had 2 radical left Soros district attorneys, like your buddy Gascon in LA, one in Tampa, one in Orlando. They were endangering the public, and I removed them from their posts. Gavin Newsom has not lifted a finger to rein in Gascon in LA. That city has collapsed. That county's collapsed because he is not enforcing the law. So that's just the and here's the thing.
American city.
This is what's happening.
So I thought it was funny. DeSantis points out a problem with crime happening in Los Angeles, and Newsom's response isn't to say that crime isn't happening. He's saying, "Don't insult our city."
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't watch that debate. That thing was totally out of control. I mean, everybody's stepping on everybody else, and that's kind of like.
And there were only 2 of them.
My family debates, my voice goes higher, and I interrupt their point before they're done making their point. A tendency I have that I have to work on, and I want to work on that. But if I had a moderator that told me to shut up, I would do a much better job. And watching that debate is painful. That's like watching me debate somebody.
Yeah. Well, before we go on too much longer, I just wanted to follow this up with another an article here and a video clip that supports it. So there's one of the things that happened during lockdowns. We had all kinds of crime here in California because California was one of those places where they felt like it was fiery but mostly peaceful protesting. So they didn't quite allow that standard in Florida, but they did here in California and some other places. And one of the crazy fallouts is it brought back train robberies in California. We talked about this on a previous show, but here's an image from the Los Angeles Times. I mean, this is like literally people coming in and just hijacking the trains and pulling boxes off of all these places like Amazon shipments and other things because everybody was home in lockdown. So all these shipments were going up. And so people were just breaking into the rail cars. And I mean, look at this. I mean, it's like boxes all over the tracks and people just coming out and looting and stealing the stuff that people were ordering. So it was just absolutely crazy. And so now we have video clip here number 5 of Newsom responding to this. And I just wanted to share that with you.
I see what you see. I see what you've been covering. I see what everybody's seen and asking myself, what the hell is going on? I mean, look like a third world country, these images, the drone images that were on the nightly news day in and day out.
So, I mean, there's Gavin Newsom's own words saying that under him, we're looking like a third world country, which is just, not a screaming endorsement, I guess, of dealing with crime. But then, one of the reasons maybe why crime is doing so poorly is an extra excerpt from that particular interview where he talks about addressing that crime. So, James, maybe you could bring up video clip number 6.
Mark my words, this is not one-off. This is organized theft. These are organized gangs of people that are coming out, and forgive me for saying gangs. I know that's not a pejorative. They're organized groups of folks that move from site to site. When there's more attention, a bright light on one site, they move to the next site. A lot of these folks are arrested as if they're individuals that are not connected to the whole. And we need to change that.
Okay, so, you wonder why maybe people like Gavin Newsom have a hard time dealing with crime. They can't even talk about it. He tries to talk about it like organized crime. And they said, wait, these are groups of folks instead of gangs of criminals. If we can't even be honest about who we're talking about here, how are you going to deal with it?
The funny thing about this, during the debate, he told DeSantis, don't insult this great city of California or a great city in the US or whatever. He was talking about Los Angeles at the time. Yeah. When Gavin Newsom was talking that the garbage that we just played there, where do you think he was? Where was he? Where was all that stuff all spread all over the ground?
Yeah? He was in a third world country.
Yes, he was in a third
Los
world
Angeles.
Yes. But yet here he is on the national stage now, telling Newsom, don't insult the great city. Don't insult that great city. You know, don't do that. This is the madness that is going on. And Jason, you're right. How are we going to address crime, this issue of crime, if we can't even point to the people as what they are, which are criminals, they are gangs or whatever the hell? We can't call them that. You know, it's not a pejorative to call
groups
these
of
people
folks.
These folks. They're not groups of folks. They're just like me and you. Don't worry. They're groups of folks. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Oh, it's absolutely crazy. And maybe you bring up the visual here as well, James. So there's just to show what's happening here in California. They talk about this is an article from the New York Post, but it says Old Navy, Nordstrom, half of retailers fleeing downtown San Francisco. And so they just show storefront after storefront of all of these places that are empty. And you could go out there and find videos on YouTube. I watched one the other day where a guy just walks down the main strip from, I think, City Hall down Market Street. And it's like literally it's an exception to find a business that's still open. Even banks closed. So it's just absolutely nuts. And here's some, just a lot of pictures of these empty storefronts all along. I believe most of these are along Market Street. But it's just absolutely nuts. And some of them, they were saying that some of them, I think the reason they might have been closing was because of the business traffic differences. But some of them literally saying that there was problems with crime and people not feeling safe. Like here's Westfield. That's one of the mall operators. They say their parent company, Paris based Uniball or Unibale Rhoda, Westfield. Sorry for bungling that name, but it said the closures demonstrated the unsafe conditions for customers, retailers, and employees downtown. So, I mean, they're it's crime is part of this issue. And we've seen all these videos of people in California. It's like, under $950, the odds of you being prosecuted are like winning the lottery practically.
Yeah.
Right? So, you just walk in, grab a bunch of stuff, and that's why everything's, getting locked behind plastic in a lot of these like Walgreens and other things, so that you just can't get what you need to get. But anyways, we're starting to get short on time, so we probably won't get to any other topics except to round out this debate and our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. So, but let's get to homelessness as well. So this was kind of one of the funnier parts, I guess, and maybe sadder too, if you think of it that way. But they were talking about the issue of homelessness, and maybe we could bring up video clip number 7, James.
Mark my words. I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
Let's see, James, I think that was the wrong video clip. Let me see. That was 8. Can we get 7?
Mississippi and Texas. And so with all due respect to being lectured on some of these topics, Ron DeSantis is not the one I'm going to be listening
30-second response. You're, well, I'm looking at total time. Governor DeSantis,
look,
about 2 minutes.
He needs it.
This is a map of San Francisco. There's a lot of plots on that. You may be asking, what is that plotting? Well, this is an app where they plot the human feces that are found on the streets of San Francisco. And you see how almost the whole thing is covered, because that is what has happened in one of the previous greatest cities this country's ever had. Human feces is now a fact of life, except when a communist dictator comes to town. Then they cleaned up the streets. They lined the streets with Chinese flags. They didn't put American flags there. They cleaned everything up. So they're willing to do it for a communist dictator, but they're not willing to do it for their own people.
I want to get in with the limited time we have left.
Okay, so there you saw that the issue was, you know, San Francisco's become an absolute mess. That's the place that Gavin Newsom used to be the mayor of before he became the governor of California, or lieutenant governor and then governor, I guess. But, you know, the point is that homelessness was out of control there. He had a 10-year program there to clean it up like 15 or 20 years ago. He's expanded it out to the rest of the state. You know, it's been exported from San Francisco. But, you know, if we, the crazy thing was that he was, you know, Ron DeSantis was making this point that, look, he didn't even try to get the stuff cleaned up until he had this, you know, all these foreign leaders, including, you know, the most prominent, you know, Xi Jinping from China coming in, you know, his good dictator buddy that he was just visiting. And now let's bring up that video clip number 8, because now it makes sense seeing it right behind here. This is Gavin Newsom responding to questions about, why didn't you clean this up? You know, for the citizens, why did you leave it, you know, only until your buddy Xi Jinping shows up? So could you roll number 8 real quick?
I know folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true, for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
So poop all over the street, but we're not, you know, we're not making a huge effort to get this cleaned up until these foreign leaders come up, and it's true because it's true. So we talked about that before, but there's a couple visuals here I wanted to bring in real quick before you guys jump in on this. So here is the CNN article. California has spent billions. It's actually around 17 billion to solve this problem. And even CNN, the Cult News Network, they say the problem's gotten worse. Right? So this is one of the things they talked about in the debate. And here is an article that talks from Business Insider that talks about San Francisco's poop patrol, which is, you know, exactly what DeSantis was talking about with that little map of all of the pieces of poop, so that their poop patrollers know where to go to try to get that stuff cleaned up. And of course, you saw an awful lot of spots. So it sounds like it's a lot more than these few guys can handle here. And they're paying them like almost $200,000 a person to go clean up poop.
It's a nice gig, you know. Maybe I should try that in my retirement, you know. I have to say that you know, since 2016, I have had to go down to San Francisco on a regular basis. So over the last 7 and a half years, I have seen, I mean, San Francisco always had problems, obviously, but I mean, in terms of its major decline, I have seen the transformation of that city like you would not believe. I mean, the homelessness issue is unbelievable down there. And, you know, like I think I spoke about one time I was down there not too long ago. And there was, I don't even remember where the hell I was, but there was some place I had to walk around the downtown area. And the smell of piss and feces was unbelievable. Just walking down the street, homeless people, some of them laying down right there sleeping. This is like 4 o'clock in the evening by the time I was done with my doctor's appointment. But the city have gone from a bad condition to a horrible condition. And this way that they're trying to address this homeless problem is always the problem, is creating even more problems, because we are dealing with drug addiction, we are dealing with alcohol addiction, we are dealing with mental disease, but they are not dealing with that problem. They are looking, oh, we need to give these people new homes. We need to get them a little tent here, or get them a little apartment here, or get them a little something here. They are not dealing with the problem that is causing this horrible situation that we've seen in San Francisco. And all of these people laughing and carrying on about, oh, we are spending more money, and oh, we're going to create all these for the unhoused. That's a new thing now. For the unhoused, we're going to create these nice, wonderful places for the unhoused. But they are not dealing with the underlying problems that are afflicting these people. And these people really do need help. And this is where the government, quote unquote, could do some good, but they never do good anyway. We know they just create misery or more of it. So that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Tim? Or
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about what Leon's saying, and yeah, it's true. I mean, they have their zoning laws, and they're not building houses in California. So as the population increases, or well, actually, it's maybe leveling off. I'm not sure, but as as people want to move to these congested cities, and I'm kind of wondering what these homeless people are even doing there. I mean, it's cold and it's basically an inhospitable place from a lot of standpoints. But if you're homeless, that is. So I don't know. I'm sure that it has a lot to do with the lack of affordable housing, and especially in San Francisco. It's one of the most expensive places in the world. You have to have a high-paying job to even exist there, or which includes picking up poop, apparently. So,
it's part of the Green New Deal.
Yeah, that's the brown. That's the Brown New Deal.
The Brown New Deal.
The Brown New Deal.
The grim,
Yeah.
the grim New Deal. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's way more money than I make. So, as a pilot, as a certified pilot that has to go through constant testing, I get like 4 check rides a year. I have to pass a yearly physical, blah, blah, blah. And I've got all kinds of written tests and things that I have to do every year. And I have to pass them all and so on. So, hey, at least I know what I could possibly do in retirement. Problem is, the $184,000 would be, almost all of it would be utilized in an apartment, in a tiny little apartment in San Francisco.
A hole in the wall, Tim. A hole in the wall.
Yeah, a hole in the wall for 184 income of 184 grand. Yeah.
These sound like the Blutopian jobs of the future, being brought to us by Bidenomics. But you know what? We're almost out of time here, so let's jump right into the Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And speaking of Bidenomics, that's what it's about. We have the man himself talking here, and his big thing here is he again, prices went up because of inflation. We all saw inflation. Essentially, what happened during the lockdowns is the government pumped more money into the economy. At the same time, they shut businesses down, so there was less production. So you had more money and less stuff to buy, so the prices became higher. I mean, that's kind of how inflation works. And usually it's just government making more money with leaving the stuff alone, but here they push the stuff down by locking everybody down. So it's just the worst of all storms. And so Biden was saying that, hey, look, he's doing such a great job with Bidenomics, but it's all these, greedy businesses that are keeping the prices high. So let's go to this quote here that we have, and that's our KNP video, James.
And wages for working families have gone up while inflation has come down 65%. Giving families a little more money in their pockets and a little more breathing room this holiday season. But we know the prices are still too high for too many things. That times are still too tough for too many families. But we made progress, but we have more work to do. Let me be clear. To any corporation that's not brought their prices back down, even as inflation has come down, even as supply chains have been rebuilt, it's time to stop the price gouging and give the American consumer a break. Look, that's why I'm tackling junk fees. These hidden charges that companies sneak into your bill to make you pay more money just because they can.
So Biden, it's all about, these greedy companies, and don't worry, he's there to save you. Just like you heard Gavin Newsom talking about gasoline earlier. That's why I didn't want to lose that video clip earlier. But it's absolutely nuts, and it totally betrays too a misunderstanding by Biden or just sheer dishonesty. about what inflation is. Inflation, it goes up, and then if he says, okay, look, the rate of inflation decreased by 65%, well, that's like saying, I heard Dave Smith give this analogy, so credit to where it's due, but he said, so suppose that I gained 25 pounds last year, and then this year my rate of weight gain went down to 5 pounds. Well, I'm still getting fatter. It's not like, I can say, this is a good thing, and that somehow I should be thinner at this point. When your rate of inflation just comes down from the high points that it was at, and of course we can all see this. I mean, this is what kills me about this dishonesty. Is everybody walks into the grocery store and you see it. I mean, a loaf of bread maybe cost 25% more than it did, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it's we see it in all the products that we're getting, cars that, suddenly there's like an extra $10,000 to buy a car. So, it's just, maybe $20,000 car is now 30. It's just crazy. I mean, all of our prices have gone up, and he said, well, don't worry, I've raised your wage. It's just those greedy companies won't bring the prices down. What do you guys have to say about all this crazy
What's
stuff?
this again? Go ahead, Tim. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. If I could just go back to the analogy of the ice guy. Okay, so in a similar fashion, without going too far into the economics weeds, which I have a tendency to do, is that if the value of money dwindles down, and now the company, in a similar fashion to the ice that was hopefully being delivered to Leon, but it wasn't. But in a similar fashion, basically their costs have gone up, not because necessarily. The costs went up because of inflation, because their dollar is now less valuable. So now they have to charge higher amounts to get the same amount of percentage of profit, to make it worthwhile for them to do whatever it is that they have to do to bring their product to market. So if he wants to go ahead and fine companies for basically addressing their increasing costs, then what will happen is that the companies will no longer provide those products, or whatever it is that he's going to, it's just like the ice. Leon's not going to get his ice, maybe for a different reason, but it's going to be the same outcome. Yeah. So that's all I have to say about that lunacy. And on top of it, to attribute to this is what they do. They want to blame the free market companies out there, the big greedy corporations, for the results of their own policies, which they have done over the years, not just Biden, but everybody, to increase the money supply in the economy. And when you increase the supply of anything in the economy, what happens to the price? It goes down. In other words, the value of money went down, so that you need more of it to compensate people for bringing products to market. That's just it in a nutshell.
But the thing to notice, obviously, it is so obvious, and Tim raised this point, is that, just like we were talking about a little while ago with the gasoline issue, what do? Whenever something is not going, they have this utopia in their head as how things should be. And whenever things are not going the way their utopian head is thinking, there's always have to blame those price gouging evil corporations. Oh God, we got to do something about these profit-making disease that we have, these profit-making disease entities that we have in our society, when the truth of the matter is, it is they that causing all the misery that the citizens are suffering from. God help us.
Yeah, one thing that kills me on all this too is he went after hidden fees, is what his big thing is. That's the huge thing. Now, I will rescue you from hidden fees. Have you ever opened up your cable bill, your phone bill, or any of these, and noticed how many of the fees are government fees?
Exactly.
These are literally the fees that our government is slapping onto us, and all these things are hiding from us inside these bills. And he's acting like he's going to save us from the greedy companies that are doing this. and I'm sure that there are, times when government or companies are essentially trying to, play with the way that they structure their fees so they can advertise a certain price. And, we see this with baggage in airports constantly, where some upfront pricing, they just say, hey, look, that includes the baggage. And some say, hey, you're going to pay an extra 15 or 20 bucks or whatever. I'm sure, Tim, you're well aware of that, being a pilot. So, adding a little weight is going to charge a little more. So, but anyways, yeah, it just kills me, because most of these are government fees on all these things.
Well, even if you look at the price of gasoline that we have here in California, I mean, a chunk of the difference between California prices versus, say, Texas or Florida, you look at a chunk of it have to do with the fees that the government have tacked on because of their new blend, the new this, the new that, or we have to have for the roads and everything else. And stuff. A chunk of that difference have to do with fees that the government have tacked on to the price of gasoline.
Yeah, and
Gavin Newsom now is going to sue the oil companies to save us.
Yeah, and it's much higher than the profits that the oil companies are making on that gallon of gas.
There you go.
Yeah. I wonder if any of these fees are like the Greta Thunberg travel fee to get her around all these different places so she can stare angrily at you.
They should call it, we're trying to make electric cars more affordable fee.
Yeah. Yeah. And those nice electric cars, those nice, wonderful electric cars that they're telling us is where the future is, they are now piling up. They are not piling up on on the lots of dealerships throughout the country. But they're telling us, we're gonna have all these wonderful things by 2030 or by 20 whenever. These things are gonna be so nice and wonderful, but nobody's buying them. I wonder why.
Yeah, who wants to be running out of juice on halfway up from San Diego to Sacramento when you're coming to visit Leon and Jason?
Yes, tell me this.
Well, speaking of running out of juice, I think we've just about run out of juice for this show, because we're over an hour at this point. So, but I did want to thank all of you for tuning in and, checking out the conversation. You can go online and find more conversations that we've had like this, us tackling other issues. You can go to Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, or Rumble and just search Knuckleheads of Liberty. And feel free to try and leave comments as well, especially at Facebook, but you can do it as well. I think we have an email address at knuckleheads at knuckleheadsofliberty.com. So you can, in fact, there it is scrolling down the bottom. And if you want to, if you have some ideas for somebody that you want us to interview as well, certainly send that, or if you have some ideas that you're trying to promote in your community. And that's one of the things we wanted to mention as well. We've interviewed a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. And so before the next show, try and think about how you could do things in your region or in your neighborhood to promote liberty, because and the people who are out there to crush our liberty are going full steam. So we need all hands on deck. So if you're awake, help join the cause. But until the next show, then stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.